Hello there. Welcome to Beginners Program. Today's lesson is formulating a test automation project. When you are planning and automating testing in your system, there are lots that needs to be planned. Such as, first thing, you have to analyze what type of a product that you are developing, from which language the product has been developed, whether it's a web interface, whether it's a client interface, whether the product or the software has been developed using Java, .NET, C Sharp, what is the language. First, the product needs to be identified very clearly. Depending on the type of the product, depending on the attributes of the product, you can select the best and most appropriate automation tool. There are different automation tools which does different functions, which has different features, such as Selenium, Autoid, Roadrunner. There are different automation tools. These different automation tools supports different languages. For an example, we are working most of the time with Java. So we have selected Selenium automation tool since it supports Java and since it supports web applications. Once the tool has been selected, you have to select the type of the testing that you are planning to perform in automation. Normally, the regression testing, the smoke testing and load testing will be conducted in automation testing because those type of testing takes longer time if a user does it manually. Once the testing type has been identified, you have to write starting the scenarios. Scenarios which will be converted as testing scripts. This can be listed down either in a Word document or an Excel. You can manually writing the scenarios. Once the scenarios has been completed and reviewed, of course, you can start converting them into executable testing script. You can use Java, C Sharp or whatever the language that you use to convert the written scenarios into executable test scripts. Once the test scripts has been written, you can review and run them. There should be a logical flow of executing the test scenarios. This needs to be reviewed by the subject matter experts or who is already aware about automation testing. This cycle will continue when a change request happens in the system. Whenever the system is delivered with implementations, with changes, these scenarios, these test scripts needs to be altered and modified. Let's see how we can do this. Before writing the scripts, first we have to create a new project in our automation environment. So we have set up Eclipse and we'll be using Selenium as our tool, Selenium WebDriver. So let's see how we can create a new project and import whatever the files into our working environment. This is the Eclipse environment. So in order to create a project, first I should select File, select on New and select Project. We'll be creating a Java project, so you can select the first option, Java project, click on Next, and you have to give a project name. I'll name my project as Test Automation. Click on Finish. Now you can see your project has been created. This project will contain the default libraries which comes by Eclipse, by Java by default, and the source folder where your code files, where coding scripts will be placed at. Now we have created the project. Now we have to download the Selenium library files and import those into our project folder. In order to download Selenium library files, you can navigate to Selenium site. This is the URL. You can navigate to Selenium site and go to Downloads, this page. And since we are working with Java, you can download this client version. If your system is about C Sharp, Ruby, Python, if you're familiar with those languages, you can download those as well. But since this training program is based on Java platform, we'll be downloading this. Click on the download button. The zip file will be downloaded, and all you have to do is extract the library files in the zip file into your project folder. Here I have the extracted files. You can see these are the libraries which comes by default in the Selenium. Now let's import these files into our project folder. Remember the path that you have downloaded your file. Go to Eclipse and right click on your project. Go to Properties and you can select the Java Build Path option and click on Add External JARs. By clicking on Add External JARs, you are adding the external Java library files which you have downloaded into our test automation project. Click on Add External JARs. You can see the files that I have downloaded. Select all the files. Click on Open. And you can see all the files have been added. And click on OK. And you can see a new section has been added in here as reference libraries. Now you have all the Selenium libraries inside your test automation project. Now project has been created, but we still haven't decided what will be our framework of creating test automation. There are different structures, different frameworks of creating test automation. This is the one of the type. According to this example, all the inputs, all the variables, all the X parts will be in a single class file, and executable class files will be individually written and will be referring the variable defined class file. There are advantages and disadvantages of this structure. One of the advantages is this structure is easy to maintain and modifications are also easier. And all the variables, all the X parts, the input values that we have to give will be in a single file, so modification is easier. And also, each class file will be accessing a single variable file, so high integrity of data. If there are 2 or 3 defined variable files, if there is a change need to be done, then we have to go to each file and do the change. All the data in a single file, the data integrity is high. This structure is very appropriate when you have less number of test scenarios to be automated, because according to this structure, each test scenario will be converted as an executable class file. So if you have 100 of test scenarios, you have to create 100 of executable class files. This has an disadvantages as well, such as each test case will be represented as a single class file, large data, just like I explained. The number of test cases are high, the number of class files would be high. It is not following the double OP standards of Java. There's another structure. The structure 2 is this. Each and every class file will have its own variables, its own methods, its own functions. In the previous example, we saw that all the variables, classes and X parts will be in a single file and different executable class files will be accessing that. But in this scenario, each class file will have its own variables, its own X parts and its own functions. Advantages of this structure is all in one place scenario, easy to modify, yes. And it's also better when you have less number of test cases to be executed, easy to implement. And each and every test case can be handled individually. Different functions can be written, same functions can be written inside a class file with the same name. But Disadvantages, again, it's not the standard of double OP. And again, same method can be duplicated inside different class files. If you have to write a single method which can be used in different test scenarios, you have to write the same method a couple of times in each and every executable file. And this is very time consuming to troubleshoot. If there is an issue in the project, you have to go to each and every class file and debug what the issue is about. This structure is also better when you have less number of test cases. Let's see structure 3. This is the third structure. Most of the users nowadays use this structure to automate their project. Follow test automation. The advantage of this structure is all in one scenario. You can see the input variables XPaths is in a single file. All the methods that we'll be using in automation project in a single file. The functions and the common steps that we'll be using. As an example, when you are automating a system, the system logging function would be common. For each and every test scenario, system logging function needs to be done. So, those type of common functions can be defined in a single file. And test cases can be written as a single class file, which will be totally independent. This will be calling the methods, the functions, the common steps from the other class files. So the executable class file will have the basic navigation steps only. This follows the OOP concepts because inheritance, they are using the method and function objects, and all this will be inherited to the class files. Administration and modification is easier because it's all in different places. But this has disadvantages as well, such as to come up with this type of a structure to framework is time consuming and it is hard to follow as a beginner. This should have some OOP knowledge in order to construct something like this and also need a clear planning to start over. So according to your project, according to the number of test cases that you need to automate, according to your time consuming, the time and planning, you can decide what structure that you should follow in order to automate your test scenarios. So that's about this lesson. In next lesson, we will be learning another new feature of test automation. Good luck.